Okay, and
I'm going to highlight you, Julie.
Do we admit all and just like reiterate the in the beginning just to rejoin from the other link?
yes, hello everyone, just admit all. If you are not a presenter, please everyone, you need to join the other link. Rosa is going to be sending it out. There's also a link on the chat as well. So only presenters need to be in this meeting invite. So sorry about that, Skillport, utilized the wrong link. If you have more than one meeting in your calendar, please do join us with the attendee link. Thank you, everyone. Sorry for the inconvenience. We're about to get started, and just give us a second while we gather the folks. People are still entering the meeting as well. Okay. Okay. Yeah, just admit all. Might be easier. Hello, everyone. If you are not a presenter and you've just joined this meeting with the presenter link, please do go to the other link for the attendee link. We're going to get started right now. So, Gilbert, you're all set?
Yes, I am.
Great. You're up front at the beginning, so I just want to make sure you're all ready. So, thank you for joining us today for BGIS's inaugural event for National Indigenous Peoples Day. This session will be both in English and French, so thank you, Mark, who is our French speaker today. Please note that this is a Teams live meeting, so the chat and hand raise function is not available. We will be using Slido to get your feedback and questions. Please go to slido.com and use the event code NIPD21. You can ask your questions anonymously. Please use the thumbs up function if you see a question you like, and this will put it at the top of the list. We will be answering questions at the end of the session. We have several speakers that will be presenting today. We will be starting with an Indigenous prayer in Ojibwe by Gilbert Deschamps, then moving to a sharing circle where several BGIS team members, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, will be sharing their Indigenous journeys. Wade Griffin, our BGIS National Director of Indigenous Engagement, will then present BGIS 2 Paths, Indigenous Engagement Playbook. We would like all of you to join us on this journey. Please note that this session is being recorded. And just a note, for those of you who signed up on Skillport, the wrong link was included in Skillport. So it's important, if you see just the presenters, you're in the presenter room, you need to be in the attendee room. So just to let you know, please, an email was sent out by Rosa about that, and please use that link to join us in the attendee room. Okay, and over to you, Marc, en français. Marc, you might be on mute. Marc?
We are just having some technical difficulties. Mark got kicked out of the meeting, so he will be here shortly.
Okay. Okay. I could try to say it in French, but my French is not that good. We're going to wait a few more minutes as we see people just entering the meeting, and we will get started shortly. I don't see Mark.
Yeah, I just seen it. I
Okay,
apologize.
perfect. We're still on slide 1. Over to you, Mark, en français.
Awesome, merci. Merci de vous joindre aujourd'hui, à nous joindre aujourd'hui pour l'événement inaugurateur de BGIS pour la Journée nationale des peuples autochtones. Cette session se déroulera à la fois en anglais et en français. Merci aussi à Julie, qui est notre orateur anglais aujourd'hui. Veuillez noter qu'il s'agit d'une réunion en temps réel de Teams. Donc, le système de messagerie instantanée et la fonction de levée de main ne sont pas disponibles. Nous utiliserons Slido pour recueillir vos commentaires et vos questions. Veuillez vous rendre sur slido.com et utiliser le code d'événement NIPD21. Vous pouvez poser vos questions de manière anonyme. Utilisez la fonction pouce levé si vous voyez une question qui vous plaît, ce qui la placera en haut de la liste. Nous répondrons aux questions à la fin de la session. Nous avons plusieurs orateurs qui vont nous présenter aujourd'hui. Nous commencerons par une prière autochtone en Ojibwe par Gilbert Deschamps. Puis nous passerons à un cercle de partage où plusieurs membres de l'équipe BGIS, autochtones et non autochtones, partageront leur parcours autochtone. Wade Griffin, directeur national de l'engagement autochtone de BGIS, présentera ensuite le manuel d'engagement autochtone Two Paths de BGIS. Nous aimerions que vous vous joigniez à nous pour ce voyage. Veuillez noter que cette session est enregistrée. À vous, Wade, pour la reconnaissance des terres.
We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is, got people there, now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 and the Mississaugas of the Credit.
Nous aimerions tout d'abord reconnaître que les terres où nous sommes réunis est le territoire traditionnel de nombreuses nations, incluant les Mississaugas of the Credit, les Anishinaabe, les Chippewa, les Haudenosaunee et les Wendat. Il est aujourd'hui habité par nombre de Premières Nations, de communautés Inuit et de communautés Métis. Nous reconnaissons également que Toronto est visé par le traité numéro 13 avec les Mississaugas of the Credit.
And over to Gilbert.
Okay. Bonjour, Annie, Wajet, Tanse, Dego, bonjour, and good day. I've been offered tobacco by my niece and goddaughter, Mrs. Vanessa Dreckman, to say the opening prayer for BGIS's National Indigenous Day celebrations. I am here in Thunder Bay and in Kiwi Cardone. I'm an Ojibwe language teacher and translator, and I'm also a lawyer and a member of the Law Society of Ontario for 17 years standing. And the next part is going to be in Ojibwe. So Gilbert Deschamps, Dishnakaz, Finamanado, Dishnabe Nakaz. Mahingin Doden. Obwagan is Ningman Jabayan. Red Rock Indian Banjin Kaden and Dishkunagan. And the prayer starts with a thank you for the Great Spirit. Miigwes Kijamanado, Gin Gakinage Gagitoyan, Miigwes Nokamus, the Bikageeses, Gi Biwase Ashian Bikak. Miigwes Nimishomas, Gi Geeses, Biwase Ashian Nungum. Miigwes the Kimanang Ikwe, Gimijiang Demazuin, Gimijiang Mijim, Gimijiang Nibe, Gimijiang Awesiak, Minawagi Mijiang Biginamoin. Asema, nagibigit na, wabanong, jaunong, ningabi anong, minawagiwe danong. Nadamaw shanam jim mashkagabuyan, minawag jazong de eyang, bigwet jem nado, naging miwe. Amen. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Gilbert. Thank you very much for spending your time with us and opening today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
For everyone, please go to slido.com and use the event code NIPD21. You can ask your questions anonymously. Please use the thumbs up function if you see a question you like, and this will put it at the top of the list. We will be answering questions at the end of the session. Marc?
Merci Gilbert pour cette belle prière. Veuillez vous rendre sur slido.com et utiliser le code de l'événement NIPD21. Vous pouvez poser vos questions de manière anonyme. Veuillez utiliser la fonction pouce levé si vous voyez une question qui vous plaît, ce qui la placera en haut de la liste. Nous répondrons aux questions à la fin de la session.
Sharing circles provide opportunities for each voice to be heard, respected, and valued. They are traditional practice in many Indigenous communities across North America and are designed to ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to share their opinions and ideas. Participants in the sharing circle share their own opinions and speak their own voice. Sharing of stories promotes dialogue, equality, and trust. Today, we will have 8 BGIS team members, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, share their stories in the language of their choice.
Les cercles de parole permettent à chaque voix d'être entendue, respectée et valorisée. Il s'agit d'une pratique traditionnelle dans de nombreuses communautés autochtones d'Amérique du Nord, conçue pour que chacun ait une chance égale de partager ses opinions et ses idées. Les participants au cercle de parole partagent leur voix, leur propre opinion et parlent de leur voix. Le partage des histoires favorise le dialogue, l'égalité et la confiance. Aujourd'hui, 8 membres de l'équipe BGIS autochtones et non autochtones vont partager leur histoire dans la langue de leur choix.
At this point, we're going to start our sharing circle with our BGIS team members.
À ce stade, nous allons commencer notre cercle de partage avec les membres de notre équipe BGIS.
And we're going to start with Rocco. Over to you, Rocco.
Thanks, Julie. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rocco Longi, and I am the Senior Security Manager for the RP1 Ontario Region account. I was born in North Bay, Ontario, and moved to Sudbury when I was 3 years old, where I spent my childhood and youth, and surprisingly never set foot on a reserve, even though both parents resided on a reserve at some point in their early lives. Up until recently, I only knew my lineage, but not my culture or my heritage. And let me explain. What I mean by that is that my grandparents on my mother's side were Ojibwe, but it wasn't until 1995 that I discovered on my father's side that there was a rich history, including the fact that my great-grandfather, Simon Commanda, was chief of the Nipissing Band, and he fought in the Riel Rebellion. And his great-grandfather, who was named Chief Rottenwood, was from the Ottawa tribe of the Iroquois and adopted the name Commanda after fighting in the English-American War. The English asked for help in fighting the Americans. He agreed, and they fought side by side. His men did not speak English, but Chief Rottenwood did. And so he translated what the English wanted them to do. His men noticed that the high-ranking English officer was called Commander, but they couldn't pronounce their R's, so they called him Commanda. And it pleased him so much that he adopted the name. There's a lot more to that story, but I'm going to continue on everything else. Other than that story, I had no idea what it meant to be Indigenous, because I was never exposed to it as a culture while I was growing up. And that was up until 2 years ago when I was asked to be part of the Indigenous Engagement Committee. And in doing so, I went to Ottawa and sat at an information and strategy session led by Claude Bougeot and Wade Griffiths. Wade's presentation opened my eyes onto how ignorant I was of my own heritage and culture, and it became a whole new world for me to explore. He also spoke about the residential school system, a subject that I avoided, just like many Canadians, and it was a real eye-opener. Since that meeting, I've been on a self-educating discovery on many Indigenous subjects, including the 2015 Call to Action report, numerous websites, and even the Anishinaabe Nation Constitution. There are 2 committees I take part in. Both committees meet weekly, and although we had a slow start, we are gaining traction every day. I don't think it's a stretch to say that since the pandemic, we are all experiencing meeting fatigue. But I also want to tell you that I look forward to these 2 weekly meetings, and I always come away energized and motivated as they are the highlight of my week. Since that day 2 years ago, my eyes were opened. I was humbled, and I've been on my own personal journey of discovery, as mentioned. And because of that, last month I attended a First Nation council meeting, a regional council meeting, and came away so invigorated that I could hardly contain myself. I was fully engaged from the opening prayer, the dance, to the stories that were told by an elder. The second part of the meeting was on self-governance, and was more of a business meeting, and so it was interesting to hear a different perspective on the subject. And I look forward to attending more of these council meetings in the future. Recently, I participated for the first time in our upcoming elections for the Nipissing Band. The vote is for chief and 7 council members. I'm happy and proud to say that I did my research and I voted for the first time. And in hoping that in some small way, I could influence the future of the Nipissing community. This program has enriched my life, and I owe it all to my company's leadership and to all of the committed individuals who are pouring their hearts into this endeavor. So a big thank you to all the speakers today, our guest speaker, and all of you who have joined in for this celebration. I also want to give a special thanks and shout out to Julie Matthews, Kezia Correa, and Wade Griffiths, and of course, George Mitsopolis and Claude Bougeot for allowing me this opportunity. So now that my eyes are fully open and I am transformed, I look forward to serving in any way possible as I continue in tandem on my own journey of self-discovery. Chinmegwich, everyone.
Thank you very much, Rocco. And now we'll go on to Rob. Rob, over to you.
Hi, my name is Robbie Dorval. I am a team member of BGIS at NBRC in North Bay, Ontario as a customer business manager. I grew up in a small town in northern Quebec with a population of 2,500, with 1 school, and that was attended by all children, including the members of Eagle Village First Nation. A very unique, rewarding upbringing. As kids, we were passionate about sports, and we all played on the same teams, and all our parents were cheering us on. I was able to witness some of the challenges faced by Indigenous communities in the 70s and 80s while visiting my friends, and also see my childhood friends grow into political leaders, managers, engineers, and successful business leaders. We at BGIS and BRC have recently hired an intern to work on our preventive maintenance programs. Adam Scott is a young, engaged gentleman in Timmins, Ontario, that relocated to North Bay to attend college. And we are very fortunate and lucky to have him on our team. I'm humbled and proud to be speaking to you today and would like to congratulate the efforts of all as reflected today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob, and over to Vanessa.
Myself here. There we go, sorry. Bonjour, Vanessa Dreckman Nadizhnikos. I'm a property services coordinator with BGIS on the BMO account. I would like to thank my Uncle Gilbert for his opening prayer today. Chimagwech, Uncle. I am part of the Indigenous Communities Committee and the soon-to-be established Indigenous Employee Resource Group. I am honored to have been asked to share a few minutes of myself with each of you joining us here today. I'm a proud Ojibwe Ikwe from the Wolf Clan, originally from a small Northern Ontario community called Nipigon, and a member of the Red Rock Indian Band. I now reside in Whitby, Ontario, with my husband and our 2 teenage children. Growing up, I would go blueberry picking, partridge hunting, and fishing with family and or my friends. You would almost never find me inside the house. In college, I was the director of programming and then became the president of Oshkosh Anishinaabe Student Association, advocating on behalf of the Indigenous students. I come from a long line of strong Ojibwe women. My great-granny, Jessie Eshqueb, passed away at 105 years old, but was actually 112, as her birth certificate was recorded from her baptism, and she was almost 7 then. She lived in a wigwam and lived off the land. She gave birth to all 9 of her children in the wigwam as well. My granny, Frances Deschamps, was a traditional Ojibwe Kwe. She trapped, hunted, fished, and lived off the land as well. My mom, Wanda White, was the first of her siblings to graduate from high school, business college, and then later in life, at 45, she returned to university and received her BA, B.Ed, and became a teacher of the native language and coordinated the Native Language Instructors Program at Lakehead University, as well as being instrumental in the establishment of the native language being taught in the separate school system in Ontario. My mom had been the president of Kinawea Legal Clinic for 30 years before her passing in 2016. She was always fighting for Indigenous rights. My auntie Mona, who at 83 years old is a traditional drummer with the Lake Superior Women's Drummers Group and currently provides Zoom sessions teaching Ojibwe to myself and my cousins. My sister Denise Atkinson is the co-founder of Tea Horse Teas, a certified Aboriginal business that focuses on health and wellness with their traditionally harvested wild rice teas. And now my daughter, Abigail, who is a very talented artist at the age of 15, and the painting shown on my slide here is her work from grade 6. She was only 11 years old at the time. It's called Wolf Girl and was on display in the Robert McLaughlin Gallery in Oshawa and now hangs proudly on our family living room wall. We are also very proud of her and her accomplishments at such a young age, and we look forward to many great things ahead for her. I wish to thank you all for your time and encourage any Indigenous employees with BGIS to self-identify and join our resource group when it's up and ready. Chimagwech, everyone.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, and over to you, Lisa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa McBurney, and I am a tenant service coordinator on the RP1 contract. I was asked to share my story, so I am Métis. I didn't know until later in life that I was part Cree. I've always known my Ukrainian side from my mom's side. When we found out when my dad was Cree, we got to meet his mom and his sisters, and I got to learn more about myself and what happened to my dad. And we were informed from his mom that when he was born, the nuns came into the hospital room, and while she was not fully conscious, they got her to sign the papers to release him to the church. So he was part of the 60s scoop. When she tried to get him back, the church had already adopted him out, and she never knew where he went or what happened. So that played a big part in our lives of finding that out, and reading the adoption records where it said that he didn't look native, so would adopt. It gave us insight as to some of the trials and tribulations that Indigenous people face. And as many have said before, if you don't know your full history because it was taken away from us. And so now that we are getting to learn this and it's more acceptable, we have this voice and we have this passion to share with others of what we've been through, what we know and who we are and our culture. So for me, it's really important to be a part of these committees and say who I am and my background and help where I can. Lots of people say I don't look Indigenous, and I've heard that lots in my life because I don't. But for me, that doesn't matter. My family knows who I am and they support me in everything. And they've always told me that to use my voice for the greater good. And I've told Julie Matthews before, my nickname in my family is a Cree warrior princess. And you'd never think that ever, but it gives me joy to know that I have that support of them and to just share what I've been through. And I'm also part of the Future Leaders Committee, and I'm hoping to, with their with them, we can make Indigenous recruitment better and bring more Indigenous people to BGIS and young Indigenous leaders to BGIS, so we can get more insights and just make BGIS a better place. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for your great story. And then over to Gabrielle.
Bonjour tout le monde. I would like to start by saying how grateful I am to be part of the National Indigenous Peoples Day. Pour les participants francophones, je vais faire la présentation aussi en français à la fin. Donc, comme mentionné, mon nom est Gabrielle Sabourin. I am a senior project manager with BGIS, and I've been working on various major capital projects since 2014. I feel very privileged to have been selected to speak on behalf of my team and my company and explain on incredibly diverse the steps we can take as project managers to guide our client in mainstream ways of thinking their journey towards Indigenous ways. As a starting point in my career over 15 years ago, I embarked on my own design journey. I was a junior designer then, and never would I thought my roles would have evolved to have such a significant impact throughout the project I would manage. It is easy to think of Indigenous design as something that is very visible and depictable in an environment, like colorful native art or very specific utilities and so forth, like let's say smudging rooms, for example. But over the years, it became clear that not only we can create specific spaces based on our client requirements, but we have the enormous opportunity to work in close collaboration with Indigenous counterparts to create and conceptualize specific opportunities in our design that can sort of weave in the Native First Nation values in our concepts. As an example, and you'll see I have a few slides, but these are very high level image here, but we can look at the selected finishes and material in our concept. We also look at furniture specification for procurement and try to open the market in a fair manner to provide opportunity to source Native talents and expertise. We incorporate native species of plants, for example, in our landscape design. Again, we plan on weaving into our design the concept in close collaboration with experts and engaging with selected group to advance these opportunities in a collaborative dialogue. My most recent collaboration is with a specialized architectural firm that is 100% Native, that created a comprehensive work plan to enhance the engagement of with specific stakeholders, engaging the project knowledge towards Indigenous inclusion. This was well received by our client and really closed the gap with our own education on how we can include the interaction throughout a project lifespan. So by looking at nature as a guide for concept and design elements and including unique cultural attributes, we not only help bring forward the interests of and value, but also create lessons learned for other projects. I feel privileged to be at the forefront of this advancement, and I'm truly happy to work for a company that has those values. Donc, comme mentionné plus tôt, j'aimerais mentionner à quel point je suis reconnaissante de faire partie de cette journée nationale des peuples autochtones. Je suis présentement gestionnaire de projet senior chez BGIS. Je travaille depuis 2014, principalement sur les grands projets de mobilisation dans la région de la capitale nationale. Je me sens extrêmement reconnaissante d'avoir été choisie pour parler au nom de mon équipe et de mon entreprise afin d'expliquer à quel point les étapes que nous pouvons entreprendre à titre de gestionnaire de projet sont incroyablement diversifiées et visent à guider nos clients dans l'intégration d'inclusion autochtone. Donc, il y a plusieurs années, 15 ans déjà, je débutais mon propre cheminement dans le monde du design intérieur. À mes débuts, je n'imaginais pas que mon évolution de carrière m'amènerait un jour à avoir une influence et un impact sur les projets tels que mon rôle me le permet aujourd'hui, sur plusieurs aspects et plus spécifiquement sur le sujet de l'inclusion autochtone. Il est très facile pour la plupart des gens de considérer l'intégration autochtone dans un concept architectural comme quelque chose de très visible et repérable dans un environnement comme par exemple l'art autochtone, coloré, et des besoins spécifiques pour les cérémonies, par exemple. Mais au fil des ans, pour moi, il était devenu clair que non seulement nous pouvons créer un espace spécifique en fonction des exigences de nos clients, mais nous avons une énorme opportunité de travailler en collaboration avec les homologues autochtones pour créer des concepts et des opportunités spécifiques qui peuvent à leur tour intégrer leurs valeurs des Premières Nations. À titre d'exemple, en regardant par exemple les flux des matériaux sélectionnés, l'élaboration des concepts qui relient les valeurs autochtones, comme par exemple le cercle du partage, intégrer dans nos aménagements paysagers une sélection de plantes indigènes, les spécifications de mobilier, c'est très intéressant pour l'approvisionnement. On ouvre le marché en quelque sorte de manière équitable et offrant les possibilités de sourcer des talents et des expertises autochtones. Donc, les opportunités sont immenses et aident à tisser des liens entre les nouveaux concepts de design en étroite collaboration avec des experts qui s'engagent avec des groupes sélectifs pour progresser les opportunités dans un dialogue ouvert et collaboratif. Donc, ma collaboration la plus récente fut avec un cabinet d'architectes spécialisés à 100% autochtones, créant un plan de travail complet, améliorant l'engagement et des parties spécifiques et améliorant les connaissances du projet vers l'inclusion autochtone. Ce partenariat s'est avéré très bénéfique et a été vraiment bien reçu par nos clients. Cela a en quelque sorte comblé un écart de notre propre éducation sur la façon d'inclure cette interaction et de l'approfondir tout au long de la durée du projet. Donc, en considérant la nature comme un guide pour les éléments de concept de design et d'architecture, et en incluant les attributs culturels uniques, nous aidons non seulement à apporter des valeurs intéressantes à nos projets, mais aussi à créer des leçons apprises pour d'autres projets. Alors, je me sens encore très privilégiée d'être à l'avant-plan de cette avancée. Je suis vraiment heureuse de travailler pour une compagnie qui priorise et inclut ces valeurs. Merci.
Merci, Gabrielle. And I'm not sure if Amanda, if you had a chance to join us. Amanda, are you on the phone? Well, just a little bit background. We were having technical difficulties. Amanda, are you on the phone? If you are speaking, we can't hear you. *6 to unmute yourself. So I was working with Amanda this morning to work through her technical difficulties, but because she's an external provider, external participant, she is actually our first or second Indigenous intern. We worked with the North Bay Friendship Center to hire. Oh, is that you, Amanda? Amanda, is that you? Okay, so we were having technical difficulties this morning, and Amanda is located in North Bay, and she will be supporting Wade through the Indigenous engagement requirements that we are going to be working through this summer. So she is actually our second Indigenous intern from North Bay region as well. So welcome, Amanda, to the team. If you're still here, please just let us know you're here. Sorry, unfortunately, we did have some technical difficulties starting off. So over to you, Rosa.
Thank you, Julie. So I want to just start by thanking the leaders of this event for welcoming me to share my story and be part of such an exciting and meaningful forum. So my name is Rosa Bavaro. I'm the Senior HR Director for our Human Resources team, and I work out of the Markham office. My story is somewhat of a simple one, I guess. I've been an HR professional for 20 plus years. Much of that time, I've been fortunate to be part of the BGIS family. There have been some great successes and accomplishments over the years to which I am grateful to have been a part of. But it has only been recently, I would say in the last 12 to 24 months, where my work in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion has created for me a sense of meaning and purpose. For me, DE&I is not a program or anything really about compliance. It's a movement. It's meaningful work because it pushes us to relearn and question our stories and dissect our perspectives to really try to understand differences in an effort to be better and more connected. This work for me is humanizing, and it's all about how we enhance our experience for our team members and really create meaningful relationships. And this work for me really does transcend beyond the workplace into our communities and across our nation. Part of my work now is to help with the journey to build a diverse BGIS and increasing representation to be able to retain talent that offers that unique viewpoint or perspective or experience. And for our Indigenous communities, we are finding ways to connect, whether directly or through outside associations, to build relationships, and more importantly, I think, to build that trust. I think another key area for me is the work on inclusion. It's something we need to design for, and we need to be more deliberate about how we encourage authenticity and collaboration and flexibility, and ultimately respecting one another. And through this, we're looking at awareness and education and networking opportunities. But with the help of, and I know Vanessa has spoken to it, but with the help of our Indigenous team members, their feedback and their guidance, the latest sort of initiative that's really exciting is the introduction of our Indigenous team member resource group, which is up and coming. And this will really allow us to be able to connect and understand how to empower and build that trust. So as I close here, I just want to add that over the last few months in working with this team and being part of the National Indigenous Committee, I have learned both professionally and personally, learnings that continue to make me pause and reflect. And these learnings have extended beyond to my home, my children, my family, and have really made an impact and is really helping me think about the world that I want my children to live in. So as my journey continues, I'm committed to working hard to identify the needs, current challenges, and look to explore initiatives that will not only strengthen the organization, but also for my personal growth and experience. And so with that, I thank you for giving me a few moments to share.
Thank you very much, Rosa. And finally, we move to Kessia. Kessia.
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me speak today. I'm so honored to be speaking amongst such incredible voices. Everyone's presentations and stories have been so moving. So thank you for holding space for me today. My name is Kessia Correa, and I'm a communication specialist with BGIS. I support the Ontario Region RP1 account, and I have now been in my role for just shy of a year. So when I first joined BGIS, I did so for multiple different reasons, but one thing I do look for in an organization is an organization that's values align with my own, and diversity and inclusion has always been incredibly near and dear to my heart, especially as a biracial woman of color. It's something that I'm very passionate about, so for that reason, I didn't hesitate to join BGIS, and I also didn't hesitate to join the Indigenous Communications Committee when I was given the opportunity to do so. And I must say, I'm just so thankful that I did, because in such a short period of time, it's already been such an eye-opening experience. I've learned so much. Over the past few months, I've been able to support Wade in the creation of 2 packs, and that in itself has been incredibly educational. If there's one key takeaway that I have from that, it's that knowledge is power, and that true reconciliation and effective reconciliation can really only start with education. So for me, it's such an honor to be a part of this collective that's further educating Canada, because for many years and, for the last century, we have been lacking in education in key areas surrounding Black history, Indigenous history. So now it's an excellent opportunity to gain that knowledge and to share that knowledge and communicate that knowledge with the rest of Canada. And that's what's been so meaningful and impactful for me. And that's what gets me really excited about all of the initiatives that we've been working on. And just to wrap it up as well, another key takeaway I've had from the past year, and it's a phrase that we repeat often, and it's that we all have a role to play. Wade says that one all the time, and it always resonates with me because we truly do all have a role to play, each and every one of us, individuals, businesses, organizations, everyone has a role to play in the reconciliation journey, and no voice is ever too small to make some noise. So I encourage everyone to use the skills and the knowledge that they do have to take that away and to make some meaningful change because our journey really is only beginning. So thank you again for holding space for me today. I can't wait to continue on this journey with everybody else.
Well, thank you everyone for sharing your voice, your journey. I find it very emotional, just all of the great stories, small steps, big progress. We can only, amplify these voices. So thank you everyone for spending the time today and sharing your story and sharing your voice. So again, for everyone, please go to slido.com, use the event code NIPD21. You can ask your questions anonymously. Please use the thumbs up function, and that will put the question at the top of the list. Again, we'll be answering questions at the end of the session. Mark?
Veuillez vous rendre sur slido.com et utiliser le code de l'événement NIPD21. Vous pouvez poser vos questions de manière anonyme. Veuillez utiliser la fonction pouce levé si vous voyez une question qui vous plaît, ce qui la placera en haut de la liste. Nous répondrons aux questions à la fin de la session.
And please use the Q&A tab to post your questions. There's two tabs. There's a Q&A tab and a poll tab. The poll, you'll see a question there if you would like to answer that as well. Mark?
Veuillez utiliser l'onglet questions et réponses pour poser vos questions.
At this point, we're going to do a live poll question. Please click on the polls tab in Slido. Please answer the question in the language of your choice. Mark?
À ce stade, nous allons passer à une question de sondage en temps réel. Veuillez cliquer sur l'onglet sondage dans Slido. Veuillez répondre à la question dans la langue de votre choix.
Okay, so if you would like to put in a word, what does Indigenous engagement mean to you?
Qu'est-ce que l'engagement autochtone signifie pour vous?
And we'll wait a second while people enter those questions. Oh, investment, learning, respect, fairness, diversity, inclusion, emotional. Very true. This journey has been very emotional. Education, listening, equality, reconciliation, respect, collaboration. Inclusion seems to be the biggest word. The biggest word is the one that most people have entered. Being a better person. I like that. Indigenous consultation. Mark, you want to read? There's a couple of French ones. Do you want to read those?
Yeah. So, se rappeler de nos racines. Remembering our roots.
Thank you.
Let's see.
I think that was the only one I saw in français.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well, just leave it for a second because I love these sort of word arts because it's really reflective of what the audience is thinking. Knowledge, history, family, broader perspective, Okay. Fairness. So at this point, keep entering your what you think Indigenous engagement means. We're going to absolutely use this word art for ongoing communication. I think it's really relevant. And today we have about 500 participants. So we're really hoping to reach out to everyone. So moving over, at this point, I would like to hand it over to Wade Griffin, BGIS's Director of Indigenous Engagement. Mark?
À ce stade, je voudrais passer la parole à Wade Griffin, directeur de l'engagement autochtone de BGIS. Over to you, Wade.
Thank you. Just want to thank everyone that shared their stories. It was so good to hear, you know, how dedicated people are and how genuinely connected they are. You could see it in the response, and that means so much moving forward. But this journey, as it has been indicated, is new to us. It's something that we're starting out on, and we're trying to find how we can make this more deliverable as we move forward. So one of the things we were tasked with in the fall of 2020 was to develop an Indigenous engagement playbook. Early on in that process, we had discovered that there is no single action that can capture everything that's needed for Indigenous engagement. So it's really a series of actions that work together to support this complex journey. So in the spring of 2021, when the final draft was coming out, it was rebranded as the Indigenous Engagement Handbook that contained 43 actions in order to move forward. And then during the socialization of the Indigenous Engagement Handbook with a number of people, both Indigenous and non, we became aware of the fact that the terms handbook and playbook could potentially be viewed as offensive or at least not positive in certain Indigenous environments. So we rebranded the final product to Two Paths, Teawate in Mohawk, meaning two paths or two roads, a corporate response to the Truth and Reconciliation Call to Action number 92, Business and Reconciliation.
Ainsi, dans le cadre de notre voyage sur l'engagement des Autochtones, nous avons été chargés de créer un moyen de progresser. Ainsi, nous avons commencé à l'automne 2020 à développer un guide de l'engagement des Autochtones. Nous avons créé de nombreux guides pour SPAC, l'un de nos clients. Mais nous avons rapidement découvert qu'il n'y avait pas d'action singulière qui soutiendrait le voyage d'engagement autochtone, mais plutôt qu'il fallait une série d'actions qui travaillent ensemble à l'unisson pour soutenir le voyage complexe de l'engagement autochtone. Au printemps 2021, la version finale était enfin disponible et elle a été renommée Manuel d'engagement autochtone qui comprenait environ 43 actions et pendant notre socialisation de ce manuel d'engagement autochtone, nous avons rencontré plusieurs parties, dont certaines communautés et organisations autochtones. Au cours de cette période, nous avons pris conscience du fait que les manuels et les guides de jeu pouvaient être perçus comme négatifs dans certaines communautés et organisations autochtones. Donc, en réponse à cela, nous avons renommé notre travail comme étant Deux voies, Teawate, vers une réponse d'entreprise à l'appel à l'action de vérité et réconciliation. Il y avait 92 entreprises et la réconciliation.
So the idea for Two Paths, Teawate, came about in recognition that what we're doing here at BGIS really does or is inspired by the Churo Wampum. There are a number of pieces that are in play here, one of which is us as the one party, and then our other representatives. So in the case of Indigenous engagement, the communities and Indigenous organizations. But this is something that's transferable to the other sides as well. It could be used as our client, PSPC on the one side, or any of our commercial clients as well. So as I indicated before, Teawate translates to two paths or two roads in Mohawk, and it is honoring the Churo Wampum in that spirit. And I believe that agreement dating all the way back to 1613 actually really has just as much relevance, if not more now, than it did back then. Thank you.
L'inspiration pour Deux voies était les deux rangs wampum qui symbolise l'accord, le traité, entre les Hollandais et les Haudéchaunais. Il s'agit de l'un des premiers traités datant de 1613 et il symbolise deux voies distinctes, l'une étant celle des Haudéchaunais et l'autre celle des Hollandais. Ils avanceraient ensemble comme des frères et non comme dans une relation paternaliste. Ils se soutiendraient mutuellement au cours de leur voyage et ne se gêneraient pas pour avancer. Ce principe est encore plus pertinent aujourd'hui. Une voie pour nous ici à BGIS et l'autre voie pour une deuxième partie que nous engageons. Il peut s'agir de communautés ou d'organisations autochtones, mais cela peut également s'appliquer à n'importe quel de nos clients. Il peut s'agir de la relation que nous avons avec SPAC ou l'un de nos comptes commerciaux. Te Oate, l'œuvre Mohawk qui se traduit littéralement par deux chemins ou deux voies, rend hommage et honore les deux rangs wampum.
So we begin with learning and reflection.
Nous commençons notre voyage par l'apprentissage et la réflexion.
So as was indicated before, reconciliation is a shared responsibility. It is something that we all have a part to play in. There is no part that's too small in order to move this forward. And it's going to be a collaboration of these efforts that's really going to help move things forward. So one of the first things we did here at BGIS was to undertake an Indigenous engagement assessment. We wanted to have a snapshot of where we are now so that we know where we're going and we can measure that success as we go forward. Another item that can be part of the learning and reflection aspect is land acknowledgements. The development of these protocols for the land acknowledgements is something you can do early on, and it's something that the Indigenous peoples have been doing for as long as we've been around, and it just pays tribute to the host that you're meeting on, and it really does acknowledge the connection, that deep-rooted connection between the host and the land themselves. The cultural awareness workshops, this allows for increased knowledge with regards to the Indigenous community as a whole for culture and history. This is something we'll be rolling out as we move along, and it's actually indicated right in the call to action itself. And of course, increase awareness of Indigenous culture and perspectives. Getting to know culture through everyday items, whether it's reading and movies and different aspects. These are things that we can get that lens that the Indigenous people are getting their culture from as well. And it's very informative, and it's a great twist on things.
Une partie du processus de réconciliation consiste à replacer l'histoire dans son contexte. C'est l'apprentissage. Nous réfléchissons ensuite à ce que nous avons appris. Il y a plusieurs actions que nous pouvons faire ici. Comme indiqué précédemment, il y a environ 43 actions différentes. En voici 4 qui résument l'activité d'apprentissage et de réflexion. Nous allons commencer par une évaluation de l'engagement des Autochtones. Afin de comprendre comment nous progressons, nous devons comprendre où se trouve notre point de départ. La clé ici est d'être honnête sur ce point de départ. Ce que nous faisons avec cette évaluation. Il s'agit d'une série de questions que nous nous posons pour savoir où nous en sommes dans notre parcours d'engagement autochtone, où nous en sommes par rapport à nos activités d'engagement autochtone et à notre reconnaissance de la culture et de l'histoire autochtone. Un excellent exemple de ces évaluations, si vous n'avez pas d'outils vous-même, est d'utiliser le Conseil canadien pour le commerce autochtone, le programme de relations progressives avec les Autochtones, ou PAR. Il est de très bons conseils pour cela aussi. L'une des premières choses que nous pouvons faire en signe de respect est la reconnaissance des terres. Les peuples autochtones l'utilisent depuis aussi longtemps que nous existons. Il s'agit d'un hommage aux hôtes et d'une reconnaissance du lien étroit et profond que nous entretenons avec la terre en tant que peuple autochtone. Une autre activité que nous pouvons entreprendre est l'atelier de sensibilisation culturelle, qui est spécifié dans l'appel à l'action numéro 92, Affaires et réconciliation. Il vous permet de mieux comprendre l'histoire approfondie qui s'est déroulée, ainsi que les cultures et les traditions autochtones. Grâce à ces connaissances, vous pouvez mieux apprécier la perspective autochtone sur certaines des actions sur lesquelles nous travaillons ensemble à l'avenir. Enfin, nous sommes davantage sensibilisés à la culture et aux perspectives autochtones. La perspective occidentale peut être très différente de la perspective autochtone. L'un des meilleurs moyens d'acquérir une certaine compréhension est de passer par des activités culturelles typiques telles que la musique, la littérature, les films et la télévision. Ce sont d'excellents moyens de se faire une idée de ce que l'on écoute et de ce qu'on lit. Quelle est la source de divertissement et d'information dans le monde autochtone?
So we have 5 pillars that are going to support our journey as we go forward. The first is transformative leadership. The second is the recruitment, retention, and advancement of Indigenous talent. Third, we have Indigenous procurement champion. As number 4, business and economic development. And finally, we have relationship building and community engagement.
Une fois que nous avons commencé notre voyage d'apprentissage et que nous avons réfléchi à certaines des leçons que nous avons apprises et réapprises, nous en sommes en mesure d'entamer ce voyage de réconciliation. Nous avons ici 5 piliers qui ont été spécifiés ou décrits pour soutenir le voyage à mesure que nous avançons. Le premier est celui du leadership transformationnel. Le deuxième pilier est le recrutement, la rétention et l'avancement des talents autochtones. Le troisième pilier est celui des champions d'approvisionnement autochtones. Le quatrième pilier est celui du développement commercial et économique. Et le cinquième pilier est celui de l'établissement des relations et de l'engagement communautaire.
So on the title pages for each of the pillars, I've added a talking stick, and I thought this was very fitting. So a talking stick or a speaker staff is something that's an object of democracy that's been utilized in Indigenous culture, mostly on the West Coast, but it's something that is part of other cultures as well. And what the talking stick does, it can or has been used in council meetings, powwow gatherings, storytelling circles, and ceremony, and it's a great tool for resolving disputes as well. So the person holding the stick has the attention of the audience and is the only person that is to speak, and the others are to listen and be attentive to what is being said. Thank you.
Pour chacune des pages de titre, il y a l'image d'un bâton de parole. J'ai pensé que c'était une bonne occasion d'acquérir des connaissances sur ces instruments de la démocratie autochtone. Je pense qu'ils conviennent très bien à ces espaces. Le bâton de parole, ou bâton de l'orateur comme on l'appelle aussi, est un objet utilisé par de nombreuses nations autochtones, en particulier celles de la côte de l'Ouest. Il permet d'organiser des réunions de manière ordonnée et juste. Il permet à l'orateur d'être entendu. Il est le seul à pouvoir parler lorsqu'il tient le bâton de parole. Le reste du groupe doit écouter ce qui est dit et prêter attention à la personne qui parle. C'est une excellente façon d'organiser une réunion véritablement démocratique. Ces réunions peuvent être cérémonielles ou spécifiques à la narration d'histoire ou aux réunions du conseil. Mais c'est aussi un excellent moyen de résoudre les conflits. Voici les images que nous allons placer devant chacun des piliers.
Pillar number 1, transformative leadership.
On débute avec notre premier pilier, le leadership transformationnel.
So I chose transformative leadership to begin with because the commitment to by the entire organization is necessary, but in order for it to really cascade across the entire group, it needs to start from the top. So some actions that we have that can help move this forward are things like the Convening an Indigenous Engagement Committee. It's one of the first things we did here at BGIS, and this is a cross-functional committee. So we have members from HR, from procurement and projects, communications, the executive team, and what it does, it just allows for all those different parties that could be part of moving this forward to have a say in what's going on and to be part of moving this forward. You can join and support Indigenous organizations. The Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business is one that we've been a member of for some time. We were a corporate member. But there are a number of other great organizations out there that require our support, and we can gain just as much by being part of this. Being respectful of and mindful of community timelines and capacity. This is something that I say often, but I think it takes a while for it really to resonate, that we're not the only voice that's trying to get the attention of these Indigenous communities and organizations. And they have very limited capacity, more so than we do here in groups like we have. We have a lot of different resources. but they're dealing with back home their local issues. They have the normal business of the day activities, and they've got intergovernmental activities that are taking place as well. And the other aspect to keep in mind is that these people live in their communities, so they have that aspect to deal with as well. Their constituents are facing them on a day-to-day basis. Participating in significant dates, much like we are today. We began this journey with the efforts that were put forth for Orange Shirt Day back on September of last year, and then today's activities for National Indigenous Peoples Day is taking place. And just want to say that I'm really proud of how far we've come since we've begun this journey not that long ago. So, thank you.
Cela doit commencer par le haut. Donc, votre voyage de réconciliation, comme on l'a mentionné, commence par les actions et les orientations des hauts dirigeants. Et il va descendre en cascade dans le reste de l'organisation. Voici 4 activités qui sont mises en évidence. La création ou la convocation d'un comité d'engagement autochtone. C'est quelque chose que nous avons fait ici à BGIS. Il doit être composé de représentants de plusieurs départements différents qui vont soutenir le parcours autochtone. Il s'agit des groupes qui vont être en mesure d'affecter directement ou de contribuer au processus. Il peut s'agir par exemple de membres de services d'approvisionnement, de projets, de communication et de ressources humaines. Votre organisation peut également rejoindre ou soutenir des organisations autochtones. Le Conseil canadien pour le commerce autochtone en est un excellent exemple. BGIS en est membre corporatif depuis un certain temps. Il existe plusieurs autres organisations intéressantes qui ont besoin de notre soutien et dont nous pouvons apprendre et bénéficier également. Nous devons être respectueux des délais et des limites des capacités des communautés. Il s'agit d'un aspect très important pour aller de l'avant. On dit souvent que nous ne sommes pas la seule voie à essayer d'attirer l'attention de ces communautés et organisations autochtones. Elles sont très limitées en termes de ressources disponibles. Les entreprises sont souvent taxées pour ce qu'elles font, mais c'est encore plus vrai au niveau des communautés et des organisations autochtones. Ils s'occupent de questions intergouvernementales et de questions liées aux affaires, sans oublier les problèmes qui se présentent chez eux. Nous devons donc être conscients du fait que ce qui peut être important pour nous peut prendre un peu plus de temps pour attirer leur attention. Nous pouvons participer à des dates spécifiques, comme nous le faisons en ce moment. Nous avons entamé ce processus l'année dernière avec notre première expérience de la journée du chandail orange. Puis, c'est notre première tentative pour la journée nationale des peuples autochtones. Ces activités sont dirigées par notre comité de communication autochtone, sur lequel nous reviendrons un peu plus tard. Mais c'est la participation qui stimule le dialogue afin d'aller de l'avant. Over to you, Wade.
So pillar number 2, recruitment, retention, and advancement of Indigenous talent.
Pilier numéro 2. Recrutement, rétention et promotion des talents autochtones.
So pillar number 2 is something that we are relatively new to and something that we're working on. We have seen some of our own employees here at BGIS begin to self-identify, and that's part of the journey as well. But there are some things we can do to increase the number of Indigenous employees we have going into the future. We begin with the development of a recruitment and retention strategy. Take a look at aspects that we have within our own culture that can help encourage more participation from the Indigenous employees or potential employees. But one of the first things we should look at is the barriers to Indigenous employment within the confines that we have here. So a workshop is an environment that can help with that. It's kind of an extension of the cultural awareness workshop. And what it does is it makes us more aware of some of the limitations we take for granted, things like childcare or transportation, policy issues that we have. Cultural leave is one that I always mention. So these are aspects we need to kind of self-examine as we move forward. The development of opportunities to increase Indigenous employment outcomes within the workplace itself. Again, it's really just making those potential employees more aware of who we are and make them better understand the welcoming environment, that we're not just going to welcome them in and be employees. We want to really work with them and nurture that journey. That's where the advancement of the talent really kind of kicks in. And of course, the establishment of an Indigenous employee support group. That's something we've heard some people mention already, and this is great moving forward. But what it's going to do is it's going to provide an atmosphere of like-minded people, similar in goals that they have, because obviously you're going to be attracted to an environment where you find others that are like yourself there as well. So looking forward to seeing some of these initiatives roll out in the next few months and next few years as well. Thanks.
C'est l'un des piliers qui a évolué le plus au fil de notre parcours. Au départ, il s'agissait du recrutement et de la rétention des talents autochtones. Nous avons ajouté l'avancement parce que c'est l'avancement et le développement de ces carrières qui seront essentiels à l'avenir. Cela contribuera à la rétention à l'avenir. Donc, tout d'abord, nous allons développer une stratégie de recrutement et de rétention. Il y a quelques étapes qui sont décrites ici. Comprendre les obstacles à l'emploi. Nous tenons pour acquis des choses fondamentales telles que la possibilité de se rendre au travail ou de faire garder ses enfants. Ce sont des choses qui peuvent être très problématiques et qui peuvent créer des problèmes pour les Autochtones. Lorsqu'ils entrent dans la vie active, en développant des opportunités pour augmenter les résultats de l'emploi des Autochtones au sein de notre main-d'œuvre. Encore une fois, nous voulons avoir un système de soutien solide. Nous devons nous assurer que les étudiants autochtones de niveau postsecondaire savent qui nous sommes. Cela fait vraiment partie de l'exercice de communication et de la diffusion de notre marque. L'établissement d'un groupe de soutien aux employés autochtones est une autre étape très importante à mesure que nous avançons. Il est plus facile d'attirer des talents lorsque nous avons des talents similaires ici et qu'ils peuvent voir des visages familiers et des gens qui ont la même vision de la vie. C'est essentiel pour attirer et retenir les talents à mesure que nous avançons. Over you, Wade.
Pillar number 3, Indigenous Procurement Champion.
Pilier numéro 3, champion d'approvisionnement autochtone.
So this is one of the areas where we spend quite a bit of time in the last few months. It's where we have a real opportunity to move the Indigenous spend forward and understand some of the obstacles. So one of the first things we've been doing is building out our Indigenous vendor directory so that we, if you have a good listing of candidates to work with, you're more off to have success getting those tenders being successful. So we begin by examining two main directories that are out there. One is maintained by the federal government, that's the Indigenous Business Directory, and the other is maintained by the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business. They have a certified Aboriginal business listing as well. So we've been going through that in great detail to maximize the potential vendors that we have out there that we can work with. We want to create opportunities for Indigenous suppliers. It's one thing to identify them and to make them aware of tenders, but we also need to create opportunity when we can. And last year we did this. We tried a pilot project whereby we identified an opportunity that was water bottle filling stations that were located in 3 of the regions. We prepared the tender so that it targeted Indigenous vendors. We were able to identify vendors that were willing and wanted to take part in this. And then we rolled this out, and it was a great success in a couple of the regions. One of the regions we did learn some activities from it, but the key here is we were able to identify some very good Indigenous vendors moving forward, and we identified a market that we didn't previously have any concentration on, and that was the supply of materials and goods in addition to just service. Procurement roundtables. This gives us an opportunity to learn more about our vendors and gives them a chance to learn more about us. So we would invite Indigenous vendors that we have, as well as potential vendors that we would like to work into the circle, and we would run them through a tender or two so we can identify the challenges that they're facing and some of the obstacles, and better understand why they may or may not be bidding unsuccessfully on some of these tenders. At the same time, it gives us a chance to relay some information back to these vendors with regards to some of the challenges and obstacles that we face as well. And then finally, we have the Indigenous procurement strategy. The overarching strategy is something that we're working on right now with regards to our requests for proposals and how we roll those out and get the vendors informed. And one of the subsets of this is the Indigenous Participation Plan. It's been called a Indigenous Benefit Plan in the past, but it allows us to incentivize aspects of Indigenous business, encouraging second and third tier vendors to participate. And during the process, after time, this process would allow for these second and third tier vendors to hopefully become tier 1 vendors in some cases. Thanks.
Pour continuer, la chaîne d'approvisionnement et la machine d'approvisionnement seront essentielles pour faire progresser les dépenses autochtones. C'est l'un des premiers endroits où nous avons cette opportunité. La première chose que nous faisons ici à BGIS, c'est de nous occuper des fournisseurs autochtones en créant et en tenant à jour un répertoire des fournisseurs autochtones. Nous commençons par utiliser les répertoires de tierces parties, le répertoire des entreprises autochtones, qui est maintenu et produit par le gouvernement fédéral, ainsi que le Conseil canadien pour les entreprises autochtones. La liste des entreprises autochtones certifiées, des entreprises autochtones certifiées. Nous procédons à ce que j'appelle une plongée en profondeur, afin de pouvoir examiner chaque fournisseur et déterminer ceux avec lesquels nous avons une possibilité importante de travailler cette année et l'année prochaine. En même temps, nous pouvons passer en revue les autres fournisseurs qui ne peuvent pas être utilisés directement cette année, mais qui peuvent être une alternative en cours de route, afin d'avoir une meilleure compréhension de ce qui est disponible et des possibilités que nous avons d'intégrer ces fournisseurs dans notre système. Ensuite, il s'agit de créer des opportunités pour les fournisseurs autochtones. Un exemple de cela est quelque chose que nous avons fait l'année dernière. Nous avons lancé un appel d'offres ciblé pour les stations de remplissage de bouteilles d'eau. Nous avons commencé par déterminer qu'il y avait suffisamment de fournisseurs autochtones capables de répondre à cette exigence et désireux de le faire. Nous avons ensuite préparé les documents d'appel d'offres et exécuté l'appel d'offres. Le résultat s'est avéré très positif, mais surtout, il nous a ouvert les yeux sur la possibilité d'augmenter nos dépenses en fournissant uniquement des matériaux plutôt que des services. Ensuite, nous avons les tables rondes sur les marchés publics. C'est l'occasion d'en savoir plus sur les défis des fournisseurs autochtones et des fournisseurs autochtones potentiels. Et pour eux d'en savoir plus sur les défis que nous rencontrons également dans ce processus. La communication entre les deux parties permet de mieux comprendre ce qui se passe dans cette activité. Ensuite, il y a la stratégie d'approvisionnement autochtone. Il s'agit de l'un des aspects essentiels pour pouvoir faire progresser les dépenses autochtones. Nous devons être en mesure d'élaborer des appels d'offres plus accessibles et mieux compris par les fournisseurs autochtones. Il y a des outils que nous pouvons utiliser pour accélérer le processus et attirer l'attention. L'un d'entre eux pourrait être un plan de participation autochtone qui encourage l'utilisation de fournisseurs autochtones en tant que fournisseurs de deuxième et de troisième rang. Ils peuvent également encourager les fournisseurs autochtones de deuxième et troisième rang à devenir des fournisseurs principaux dans le processus. Thanks.
Pillar number 4, Business and Economic Development.
Pilier numéro 4, développement commercial et économique.
Just to provide a little background, Pillar 4 used to be part of Pillar 3, and as we rolled this out, we broke them apart because there were distinct communication type activities that extended into these economic and business activities. So one of the first things you want to do is you want to understand who influences or controls the economic development for the Indigenous community or organization. So for some of the smaller groups, it's going to be an economic development officer, and for some of the larger groups, it'll be an economic development corporation, which is a little bit more sophisticated, but at the end of the day, they're both responsible for the same thing. They're tasked with creating wealth for the Indigenous community organization itself. We're looking for partnership and joint venture opportunities. As you get a little further down the journey and you'll learn a little bit more about some of the organizations and communities, you'll find opportunities for these type of relationships to develop. And the key here is that they really do need to be mutually beneficial in order to be long-lasting and sustainable. The development of Indigenous business student mentorship programs. This is one of those activities that really exemplifies your commitment to the actual community organization itself. You're investing in the future. So in this case, we would be supporting business students to go into post-secondary to pursue business style careers. And then they could potentially either become a vendor for us as an Indigenous vendor or possibly a contractor or even an employee down the road. The supporting of Indigenous entrepreneurs. Again, growing that talent pool requires some support in some cases. So that would expand, again, our potential list of vendors or contractors. And again, it does show that that investment in the community. Thank you.
Ce pilier faisait partie du troisième pilier avant le lancement de 2 voies. Il a été séparé en raison des opportunités uniques qui existent ici. La première chose à faire est de déterminer qui est responsable du programme économique, développement économique de la communauté ou de l'organisation. il peut s'agir d'un agent de développement économique ou, dans certaines communautés plus complexes, d'une société de développement économique. Tous deux ont pour mission de générer des revenus pour la communauté ou l'organisation qui va de l'avant. Nous pouvons également créer des partenariats et des co-entreprises. Nous pouvons examiner les possibilités de travailler avec les communautés ou organisations autochtones pour créer des partenariats durables et mutuellement bénéfiques. Le développement d'un programme de mentorat pour les étudiants autochtones en commerce est l'une des tâches les plus spécifiques qui répond aux besoins de créer davantage de professionnels autochtones en commerce au sein de la communauté. Ils peuvent devenir des vendeurs potentiels ou des entreprises potentielles avec lesquelles s'associer par la suite. En encourageant les élèves du secondaire à poursuivre des études de commerce au niveau postsecondaire, on crée ce groupe supplémentaire de vendeurs ou de vendeurs potentiels. Enfin, le soutien aux entrepreneurs autochtones. Nous devons travailler avec ces entrepreneurs autochtones et favoriser la relation afin qu'ils soient capables de devenir des participants volontaires, non seulement dans notre système, mais aussi dans d'autres systèmes. Cela permettra de maintenir la prospérité au sein de leur communauté également. Thanks.
Pillar 5, Relationship Building and Community Engagement.
Pilier numéro 5, établissement de relations et engagement communautaire.
And this is the pillar that I refer to as being the most critical pillar. We've left it for last, but it's the one that I firmly believe that if we do this one correctly, the other pillars really fall into place. And this is the one that's the most important for moving the journey forward. So you can begin by convening the Indigenous Communications Committee. In our case, it was a volunteer basis. And as I mentioned before, the activities on September 30th last year for Orange Shirt Day, they were spearheaded by this group, and that same group has made this happen again today. So this just shows you how what can come from these efforts. And one of the things that I didn't say about those 5 pillars at the beginning is that centerpiece that's kind of open, and that's really communications. Communications is what's going to tie all of this together, and that's why it's so important. Engaging early and often. This is kind of an extension of the previous one we had with regards to being mindful of the limitations that the different organizations and groups may have. So what you want to make sure here is you want to make sure that your engagement is authentic. It's not transactional. You're not going in there when you have something to say or something to do. So identify the group and go in early and introduce yourself, get to know them, get some conversations flowing, and then when something does come up, they're more apt to listen because we have a relationship here. It's not, oh, here you're trying to sell me something. And then often when we go through, we all have busy schedules. We have to be mindful that when we begin the process, we're now obligated to continue the efforts that support that process. And time is very meaningful to these particular groups. Going in there for transactional, they'll see through it, but the investment of time will be realized over the course of this journey. Engaging local champions. This is something that's really important as we go forward because we can't be in these communities and near these organizations all the time. So we can find someone that's local that can help convey and support the message. It will really strengthen our efforts, and they'll keep you more aware of what's going on and what challenges and opportunities may arise. Finally, we have the creation of internship, mentorships, and training programs. Again, this is an extension of that investment in the community, showing that you're not just connecting to it, but you really want to connect and commit to the future generations of these organizations and groups. And build meaningful relationships and that are mutually beneficial. So originally this was titled something along the lines of, establishing MOUs and letters of intent to work with them, so we have this shared vision going forward. But we really do need to get away from some of the rigid structural confines we have in business to make them more successful with the Indigenous communities and groups. So what we want to do here is we want to introduce ourselves, we want to share our common goals, determine what's common, and then agree on a path forward. So again, this is that spirit of the 2 paths. It's our goals, your goals, and then our shared goals going forward. And that's where we're going to have our success. Thanks.
5e pilier, l'établissement de relations et de l'engagement communautaire. C'est probablement le pilier le plus important, celui pour lequel, si nous le faisons bien, les autres piliers se mettent en place. Mais on l'a gardé pour la fin, car il peut être aussi être très élaboré. On a déjà mentionné le comité de communication autochtone, qui est l'une des premières choses que nous avons faites. Pour BGIS, ce comité est composé de volontaires. Ils ont été le moteur des activités de la journée de la chemise orange l'année dernière et sont également à l'origine de cette activité. Dans notre cas, parce que nous sommes présents d'un côte à côte, il y a des aspects régionaux qui sont requis et nécessaires. Il est donc bon d'avoir des représentants des différentes régions dans ce comité afin d'avoir une approche très équilibrée pour aller de l'avant. Il faut engager le dialogue tôt et souvent. Si vous ne vous rendez dans des communautés que lorsque quelque chose est requis, cela devient transactionnel. Nous devons nous éloigner de cela et nous devons donc nous présenter dès le début lorsqu'il n'y a rien de spécifique à discuter. Et nous devons être présents souvent pour comprendre les défis et les opportunités de la communauté, mais aussi pour qu'ils puissent voir que nous ne venons pas seulement lorsqu'il y a quelque chose de spécifique à aborder ou lorsque nous avons un programme à faire avancer. L'engagement d'un champion local est une excellente opportunité pour que votre message soit continuellement soutenu par la communauté. Nous ne sommes pas en mesure d'être présents dans la communauté en permanence. Les champions locaux sont donc essentiels pour soutenir un message cohérent directement au sein de la communauté elle-même. Ensuite, nous avons la création de programmes de stage, de mentorat et de formation. C'est une excellente occasion pour une organisation comme BGIS de montrer son engagement envers l'avenir de ces communautés autochtones. En soutenant les jeunes, afin qu'ils aient de meilleures compétences ou qu'ils puissent entamer des carrières plus durables à l'avenir. Cela montre vraiment cet engagement envers les communautés elles-mêmes. Enfin, nous établissons des relations significatives qui sont mutuellement bénéfiques. Il s'agit vraiment d'un processus. Il commence par des présentations officielles, puis nous organisons une série de réunions avec la communauté et ou l'organisation afin de déterminer les intérêts communs des deux parties. Au fur et à mesure de ce processus d'apprentissage, notre dialogue aboutira à la création d'un accord sur la manière dont nous pouvons aller de l'avant, un accord qui sera vraiment mené par les deux parties. Plus important encore, il sera mutuellement bénéfique. Ce sont nos deux voies d'avenir qui se soutiennent mutuellement. Thanks.
Merci, Mark McCool. We can't do a lot of this communication without Mark McCool's help, who is our French person who did all of the translation. So thank you very much, Mark, and thank you very much, Wade. So again, please slido.com, use the event code NIPD21. You can ask your questions or use a thumbs up function. And again, just a reminder, there is a Q&A tab as well as a polls tab. So please use the Q&A tab. Mark?
Veuillez vous rendre sur slido.com et utiliser le code de l'événement NIPD21. Vous pouvez poser vos questions de manière anonyme. Veuillez utiliser la fonction pouce levé si vous voyez une question qui vous plaît, ce qui la placera en tête de liste.
At this point, I'm just going to go through the questions and facilitate those questions. So the most popular one we have, is there anything that a non-Indigenous person can actively do to support the Indigenous community and the specific people on whose traditional land I reside? Wade?
So that's a great question. So always best to start at home. It's where you're most connected. So if you don't know where to start, I would suggest looking for your local Indigenous Friendship Center. And we're currently working on preparing a listing for that. And what they do is they connect the urban Indigenous community in those urban areas. So for instance, down here where we are, there's one in the city of Hamilton that supports the surrounding areas. Most urban areas in Canada have something like that. So that's a good place to start. If you don't know which Indigenous communities out in the area or which treaty groups would be potentially part of that area. If you do happen to know who your Indigenous community is, if you reach out to the local, if it's a First Nation, the band office will have information for you. Typically there's a communications person or someone along that line. There are Métis organizations out there, and there are Inuit groups as well. So again, and if you need any help, I'm always happy here to share or point you in the right direction. That was really the idea behind Two Paths, was to collect the resources that are out there and try to put them under one roof, because this really is about the dissemination of information. Thanks.
Thank you, Wade. And what is BGIS's priority for Indigenous engagement? Maybe just list the top one.
Top one is going to be relationship building. I know we talk a lot about vendors and we talk a lot about the community engagement, what that can mean, but this is about building a relationship, which eventually will lead to some type of trust. I know that trust has been an issue in the past, specifically with corporations and more specifically with government bodies. They've heard a lot of great promises in the past. There's been most of which failed to come to fruition. So what this entails is just meaning what you're going to say and going in there and having dialogue. And again, don't go in there to sell something, go in there to listen and participate. And that's where we'll move this forward. It's relationship building. That's the best way I can describe it.
And here's the next question. I like this one because we debated about this quite a long time. So can you explain the background as to why the playbook and handbook are offensive to some? It would be very interesting to understand this. Sure.
So again, it's potentially offensive. It depends who you ask. You ask 10 different people, you may get 10 different answers. But the key here was that playbooks and handbooks very much are a corporate tool that we utilize. We're very used to it. And I actually kind of fell into I won't call it the trap, but it's the mechanism myself. And the reason that they potentially could be viewed negatively is that these are like instructional sets for action. So they're being perceived as a set of instructions on how to handle or play the Indigenous groups. So that's where we want to get away from that. The spirit of this is really about how we can work together and how we can move ourselves both in unison along this journey of reconciliation. So that's where that potential idea came from.
The next couple of questions are more kudos, so just a big thank you to all of the presenters and organizers for this presentation. We have another question below, which is, will BGIS be recognizing Canada Day this year in light of requests from some Indigenous leaders asking people not to celebrate Canada Day? And I know, Wade, you and I have discussed this and we've talked to HR. I know at this point, these are very much personal feelings as well around this, but I'm going to take the first answer, Wade, and you can jump in. BGIS is understanding of these requirements, so we will be looking at our applications around Canada Day celebrations about this. So Wade, anything to add? Or Rosa, if you have anything to add, I know we've just discussed this.
I've been talking a lot, so if Rosa has something to add, we can let her jump in. If not, I'm more than happy to make a comment.
Yeah, you know what, and thank you for that. I know that we have been very, very mindful of the different perspectives coming in. So we're still kind of working through what sort of next steps will look like, but all of that input and feedback is being taken into consideration, so we can be sort of very respectful and reflective of you know, our team members. So but you know, the good thing is, I think, is the fact that we are operating very, very slowly in terms of trying to understand what's best. So that's kind of all I have for now.
Thank you very much, Rosa. Not the necessary, we don't have all the answers yet, everyone. We're just starting, and Wade and I discussed this with HR last week, actually. So if you have questions, please let us know. I will be sending out some of the presentation material, attaching it to our Indigenous Communications Teams site. So there will be additional communication coming, as well as a copy of the presentation. So the next question on the list is more kudos again for referring to the Truth and Reconciliation Call to Action. Here's another question. How can BGIS connect and utilize Indigenous rights synonymously with human rights through actions and not just solidarity? Wade?
That's actually a really good question. Before I go into that, I want to go back to one previous question, because you highlighted something that kind of triggered a thought process where they asked about the playbook handbook concept. And part of the problem with that is when you have these ideas of playbooks and handbooks, it's construed as you have the answers. And that's another thing here. We're learning, and this is like I said, a shared learning exercise that we have. But with regards to the Indigenous rights, this gets a little more tricky. This is more along the lines of the duty to consult, and this is more of that nation-to-nation responsibility. So while here at BGIS we have a business-to-business relationship with these organizations and communities, the idea of the human rights and how that can be supported, well, I think most of us, if you aren't, you will be aware that the UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on Indigenous Peoples' Rights, has been upheld by the federal government and is being enacted. I can't remember the actual enaction date, but this is moving forward now. This started out in BC, but this is becoming a national effort. This is very significant because what it means is the Indigenous peoples that are the treaty rights holders or the traditional territory holders have to be consulted moving forward on things that affect the land. So it really kicks in with regards to resource style activities, but it can come into play with certain infrastructure things. So something like this where, you know, if you're rerunning a sewer line and it's 100 years old, well, it could be potentially be a lot larger than it was. Well, now the scale is different and you could be triggering some of these. So I think this really needs more discussion in the future. So I think the next natural step is to undertake our own local cultural awareness workshops that we're going to be undertaking. And then there's going to be certain breakout things. We talked about the HR activities that would be on top of that. This could be something that could be prepared as well, understanding the actual treaty rights. So even though that we don't necessarily impact these treaty rights and the human rights that are the result of that, it's good to be aware of that because it's fantastic that clearly someone wants to be a supporter and others do. So again, it's part of that education aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, Wade. And I know I want to focus on the word action versus just, you know, talking. And I know Wade and I and the whole entire team, including HR and all of the people that support Indigenous communication, we want key actions. A good example is we hired 2 Indigenous interns. And that was very important. We worked very closely with the North Bay Friendship Center, and we wanted to achieve something, and we did. So this is not just talk, this is really about action.
Well, and
okay,
the
here's an
two
example.
paths, sorry, Julie, the 2 paths is about action. And that's why we put this together, because it was at a high level, we've been tasked with, you know, how do we address this call or the call to action number 92. And it's about actions in response. So we have 43 actions, but the problem there is that we're not expecting anyone to undertake all 43 actions. So we break it down into sub-compartments. Which actions can we do in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months to formulate an action plan per se? So you're right, it is very much about what are the things that can be done, and these are the things that we can take part in as we roll this out. Thanks.
Thank you, and I'm keeping an eye on the time, and when you have questions left, which I think are very important, so we'll try and get to those. How does one go about self-identifying? And Rosa, do you have a response for that?
I absolutely do. So we do collect employment equity data. It's not mandatory by any means. If you are interested in identifying, you can reach out to myself or one of our members of the HR team, and we can send you a formal form that you would complete, and we can ensure that your information is updated for all of our information systems. That information is kept confidential, and we only report on it in aggregate. And yeah, if you have any questions, you can reach out.
Thank you much. Thank you very much, Rosa. And we have another question here, and I'm actually familiar with this sort of statement. We celebrate Indigenous design led by Indigenous companies, and we're doing it. They mentioned CDL here, where we are working towards that, but we're doing many of our other buildings, especially within the NCR, working very closely with PSPC, whether it be a PSPC project, and we have these discussions across the region. What does Indigenous design look like? And that's why it was so important to get Gabrielle to present her thoughts as a project manager who has dealt with it for the last few years in different buildings within the NCR. But how do we apply that across Canada? more to come on Indigenous design. We look forward to really building that into our project processes. Wade is helping us build that path towards that. So I would expect next year you will hear a lot more about our Indigenous design. Okay, and just another question. How is BGIS working to include NIP, Indigenous design, in PSBC's infrastructural renewal objective? And that's a great question, and that kind of relates to the previous Indigenous design. This is new journeys. Many times when we have a large infrastructure project, the design might be further along. We're working with PSBC to incorporate that design at the different stages. So there will be a lot more. We're working with the team on incorporating that. And will that be available? Yes, I'm going to be sharing it through the Indigenous Communications Volunteer Committee. It will be posted, and we will send an update as a recording, because I know many people, I think in the province of Quebec, we had a few who couldn't attend. There was a conflict. So we will be distributing the deck as well as recording. I'll work with Rosa to make sure it goes through corporate as well for our other clients. Oh, we have another question. What are some examples of things to avoid when having conversations about engagement? Ideal if it can be contextualized for real property projects. Great question. Wade?
I'll go with the easy aspect to this, and that's the term stakeholders. We always avoid that with regards to our Indigenous counterparts. As we move forward. So as I mentioned before, we'll be avoiding playbook and handbook in the future, but whenever we have any type of engagement, at all costs, avoid stakeholder as a reference to the Indigenous party.
And I would like to add to that, and between Wade and new intern Amanda, unfortunately, technically, she tried to get into the meeting, but she couldn't. She talked to me and she's explained to me about trust. We need to build trust. It's not about me and you and let's give you some money or do our project. It's about first building trust. So it's very important that we reestablish trust with these communities. So that's very important. And Wade mentioned that earlier. So I just wanted to talk less about yourself, talk about trust, building trust and relationships. So at this point, we don't have any more questions, and I will just jump to the closing slide, which has Wade's contact information, and that is wade.griffin@bgis.com. If anybody needs a copy of the presentation before I send it out corporately, let me know. I will send you a copy. But at this point, any closing notes, Wade?
I just want to say special thanks to you and to Kessia and to Mark for really making this happen, and to everyone on the committee and who took part in this. I'm thrilled that this is clearly an area of that requires their attention, and they've got their commitment. So this is what's going to help move this forward. So Yahweh.
Thank you, everyone, and Megawetch and Vanessa. Thank you for your Uncle Gilbert for opening prayer. We appreciate all of the support from BGIS across the company, and we look forward to all of you joining us on this great journey. It is a journey. If you would like to volunteer for the Indigenous Communications Committee, you can send julie.matthews@bgis.com an email. I would love to add you to our list. Again, this is a employee-driven volunteer committee with lots of different activities and suggestions. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Wade, for all your hard work over the last 2 years. Megawetch. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Megawetch.
Kessia, do you want to stay on?
Yes, I will stay.